So I had the opportunity to drive with Representative Parkinson yesterday. We met at the airport at 4 and drove out here together, and he's just a fascinating guy with a lot of cool stories. He's done a lot of cool things in his life, and I'm sure he'll share some of those stories with you that he shared with me. So I feel like he's my new BFF. He's a lot of fun. So I'll just go ahead and bring you on up here and let you share. Hopefully you'll share how you got interested in workplace bullying with us, and obviously we want you to talk about your law that you got passed in Tennessee.
All right,
So
sure.
come on up.
Sure, let's share it all. So first, let me tell you, I'm really shy in speaking in front of crowds. I'm just kidding. But let me thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me, and for the rest of the coalition, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's kind of humbling to be asked to come and speak, about something that you're doing, and to know that you're being researched in a good way, in a good fashion, and to actually talk about some of the things that you're passionate about. Even to all of the presenters that were presenting here before me, thank you so much, because I've learned so much today. It's a lot, and it's so interesting. And my speech coach here, my public speaking coach here, we talked about that on the way up here, but I'm so far off the script but I like to speak from the heart. It's so interesting because in listening to the presentations and being a person that has gone through this personally, I saw everything. And I hadn't done this much research. Y'all did all the research. I hadn't done nearly half of the research that you guys have done, because we have people that do research for us. And so, we're kind of just the messenger once we compile all of the information together. But listening to the presentation, I saw every single thing that I went through as an individual that dealt with someone that was bullying in the workplace, and more. And if it's interesting because if you have not. I didn't know what workplace bullying was. I didn't even know it existed until I went through it. And I think that's been kind of the theme here. Most of the individuals that presented said they went back and started researching after they went through the same situation. And it was the same thing with me, same exact situation. So I guess I'll jump on in here. I got a couple of notes, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, I'm Antonio Parkinson. I was born in Oakland, California. I grew up in LA for the most part. When I was in high school, my mother moved us back to Texas, where she was from, and that's where I finished high school. I got kicked out of several high schools. I did got kicked out of, I thought I got kicked out of 2, but my cousin reminded me. He said, "No, you got kicked out of Stephen F. Austin too." So I didn't even remember that one, but yeah, and look at where I am now. So, I was out workplace bullying or bullying. I had 3 experiences that got me to the point to where I wanted to draft some legislation about it, and those 3 things were I was the high school quarterback. This is the first high school I got kicked out of. I was the high school quarterback. I was in 10th grade. I was 14 years old, and there were older gentlemen that were on the football team that were bullying. They were bullying me, and it was because I was an up and coming quarterback, so I was a sophomore on the sophomore team. Texas football is really big. We ate, sleep, breathe, live football, and I was coming up as the next up and coming quarterback. Well, it wasn't so much about the fact that I was coming up as the next up and coming quarterback as much as it was the girls liked the up and coming quarterback, and so there was a jealousy issue going on with them. So they bullied in the locker room, and watch this. This came up earlier. And as a child, what I wanted to do was escape the bullying, so I quit the football team. Okay, and we're gonna come back to that too again. I quit the football team, and the bullying continued down the hallway, so it didn't stop. So I couldn't escape it. And part of the reason why I quit the football team was because the culture of football, Texas football, I couldn't go to the coach and say, "Hey, coach, these guys are bullying me." And now they would have started bullying. And so, I quit the football team, but it continued on. At the age of 14. Now, so I had these 3 or 4 Texas-sized seniors in high school that are kind of bearing down on me, bullying, Me in the hallways, you know, you walk through the hallways and they push you and it goes on and on. Because one of them liked the girl that liked me. But hell, if I'd have known she liked me, I probably would have liked her back. But I didn't even know. But so anyway, so it continued on, and they threatened to jump or to beat up myself and my brother and a couple of other guys that we used to hang out with on the last day of school. You know how the story goes. Last day of school. I was now just so to give you a little background. I had pretty good grades, but I had a little street edge too. Okay, and so on the last day of school. Me, myself, my brother, and a couple of our friends, we gathered together, and they presented 2 guns. Right, one real one and one fake one. One real gun that was fully loaded, and one fake gun that looked like it was loaded. I chose the real one because I was the victim. I thought that at 14 years old, I thought that if any of these big guys, you know, decide to jump on me, I'm going to defend myself because I was scared. I was scared, and plain and simple. I was scared. I didn't want to get beat up. I saw them beat up people before. I didn't want to be a victim of that. So on the last day of school, I'm in second period, taking my algebra test. Last algebra finals. Never forget it like it was yesterday. And 3 of the principals, big high school, 3 of the principals came into the classroom. And they asked me to walk outside the classroom, walk to the bathroom next door to it, and they asked me for the gun. And they found out because I told one person that I thought would never ever tell. And the interesting thing about that is, you know, of course I gave them the gun, and you know, I went to jail. Yeah, went to jail for a day, lost all my grades, and had to make all that up. But the interesting thing is this: had that principal not came and got that gun, I wouldn't be standing here before you. So had that guy not told that principal that I had a gun, a loaded gun in my pocket, somebody's children might have died that day. Yeah, and I would have been somewhere else. My whole trajectory would have went totally different in a different direction. And so that guy, and it's kind of funny because I actually ran into this guy on Facebook here recently, maybe about a year or so ago, and I reminded him of the situation. He had no idea what the hell I was talking about. Seriously, I mean, and it goes to show you, you know, when people, you know, cross into your lives, you know, they're there for a purpose or a reason. But he didn't even remember the situation at all. At all. He didn't even remember me going to jail. He didn't even remember me having a gun. So that just shows you how, you know, how things work out. So that was my first experience with bullying. The second time this came up was when I was watching a similar situation with the Miami Dolphins NFL team. You guys remember that? Jonathan Martin, Richie Incognito, and so a similar situation as mine was in high school, but these are professionals. Now here this guy is, Jonathan Martin. He walks away from a multi-million-dollar job because he was getting bullied in the locker room, and they ended up letting him go. Yeah, the Dolphins ended up. I think they traded him and they released Richie Incognito, millions of dollars, workplace bullying, and that really made me think about it. I'm like, Jesus, here this guy is. He wants to go to work in a professional environment and do his job and make a lot of money. And he couldn't do that because you got this one a-hole that's in here making it difficult for him. Oh, y'all been cursing all morning, so I know I get a couple of
Just me. The rest of them have been decent.
And I didn't. Right. And so
My students are definitely used to it.
right, well that's good. Well, I'm a Marine. I have an excuse. I'm a Marine. So and speaking of that, just to give you a little bit more background about myself, I am a former Marine, and I'm also a lieutenant on the fire department. And so I was just listening to all of the fire department conversation that was going on in here, and it all sounds very familiar. So my last situation dealing with workplace bullying has been on the fire department. Yeah, fire department. So think about this. I'm 25 years on November 16th on the fire department. No, this November 16th, coming up. It'll be 25 years for me. And guess what happens at 25 years? I can walk away. I can retire. I can retire at 25 years. But guess what I was thinking 3 years ago? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And guess what the difference is in the amount of money I would have received had I left?
70%.
You have all of the answers. That's right there. You have all of yes. So think about how that would have affected me, you know, and moving forward. So here I am. I'm a lieutenant on the fire department. Just got promoted to lieutenant on the fire department. And there's another guy that got promoted at the same time to lieutenant on the fire department with me, right? And so, and you know, we do our thing as lieutenants. And then, you know, the promotional test comes up for battalion chief. And we both take the battalion chief list. I mean, the battalion chief test. We both make the list. But now things change. And then I get elected to state representative at the same time. And so now he sees me as a threat to him becoming a battalion chief. And then the bullying starts. And there's a lot of people that's watching right here, and hello to everybody on Meerkat that's watching right here. I told them I might name names, but I'm not gonna name any names. I just did that to get y'all to watch. but you know, for those that are watching that know me in Memphis and Shelby County, they know exactly who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. Because I went through, honestly, I can probably say 12 to 15 different investigations, because he ended up getting promoted to battalion chief. And that's fine, you know, I don't have an issue with that. But when he got promoted, then he started the bullying with me, because because I was never one to cower down to him or his bullying tactics. And so I went through multiple investigations. Seemed like every time I turn around, every time I come back to work, there was an investigation about something, you know, about anything. I went through times where he would change the rules verbally based on an action that I've already done that was within the rules. And then there was a time when I sat down with him, you know, to confront him. I sat down with him and told him what the rule, it was explained to him what the rule said, and he walked over to his bookshelf and got the manual and opened it up and read it verbatim from what I said, and sat there and looked at it for another minute or two before he looked up at me and walked back and put it on the shelf silently and said, "That's not what that says." I mean, it's crazy. And so in dealing with that, you know, there was a time, you know, 3 years ago, well, I was ready to cash it all in and asking myself, was it worth it? But I was advised by attorneys, because I did seek legal help. I was advised by attorneys and friends, don't you walk away from your money. Let that a-hole walk away. And guess who's leaving before I leave? He is. He is. Because you know, we you know, and my thing went all the way to the mayor. You know, I kept the emails flowing and you know, and recorded everything I needed to record and made sure that, you know, I was as transparent as possible. And I walked it all the way up the chain. Now, did anything happen? No. They didn't do anything. But you know, but what has happened now is, I think his behavior, because my part, the part that happened with me, exposed him, but other people started exposing him too. And then they started realizing that we have on our hands a liability, a true liability. And so, you know, we came up with the Healthy Workplace Act. In consultation, we talked to Dr. Nami and some others, and we had assistance from Middle Tennessee State University, some individuals from there, you know, the head of HR, well, not the head of HR, but the liaison to HR and to the legislator, John McManus, and a bunch of other people that really, you know, wanted to be involved in this. And it was so interesting because out of all of the legislation that I passed, and I passed a lot of legislation, well, let me rephrase that. I passed some meaningful legislation, very meaningful legislation, this being one of them. But out of all of the pieces of legislation that I passed, the Healthy Workplace Act is the piece of legislation that I've received more emails, more phone calls, heard more tears, hugged more people in regards to it, because this really affects people's lives. And I didn't realize that until the word got out that we were drafting legislation for it. When that hit the news, the phones lit up. And people were calling saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then we got some research and realized that in the state of Tennessee, that approximately 33% of the people in the Tennessee workforce have been victims. I'm talking about victims, not seen or watched someone else, but have been victims of workplace bullying. That was alarming to me. That's 1/3 of the entire workforce in the state of Tennessee. 1/3 of the entire workforce. That's a lot of people. that have been victims for years and had no recourse, or felt like they had no recourse. So how many of those of that 1/3 of the workforce in the state of Tennessee, how many of those people walked away? How many of those people were stressed or suffered from sickness? We already didn't want to give insurance to people, and now we want to make them sick from stress and send them packing without a job. You know, and it's tough in a state like Tennessee where you can be fired for any reason whatsoever. And so, if you think about the culture of the legislator in Tennessee, you know, Tennessee is it's so red that it's almost crimson. You know, and it's a very, very conservative state. And so to draft legislation, to even get it heard and to actually get it passed was absolutely an amazing feat in our state. And so the strategy, there were strategies with this. You know, people asked me today. I had a couple people ask me today. Were the unions involved? I'm a union person. I've been a union person since I was 18 years old. So just so you know, I'll take that back. I'm sorry. Since I was 21 years old. As soon as I came out of the Marine Corps and went to fire services, I was a union. But no, we didn't have much involvement from the union. And there's a reason for it. Strategically, there was a reason for it because the unions are such a hot item right now at the state. As soon as there would have been mention of union tied to this legislation, it would have been dead on arrival. Secondly, the word bully. I was adamant that we did not put the word bully in the legislation. And there's a reason for that, because that's another buzzword that will get you killed, get your bill killed on arrival. And it's funny because, you know, when we go into the committee rooms and we're discussing legislation, and you have some of these committee members say, "So is this a bullying bill?" Now, you know, I almost want to turn and walk out there, and, you know, but it's an abuse bill. Yeah, it's a bill about it's a dignity bill. You know, a bill that you know, just allows people the opportunity to come to work comfortably and do their job and be the professionals that they are. No one deserves to have to come into their place of work and have to deal with what I dealt with. Most people wouldn't survive it because the pressure was on. The pressure was on. And then think about it. Think, you know, and you try to navigate that, you know, or you know, or walk that tightrope. And then think about it. I'm a public official too. So trying to navigate that now. So this is what I was facing. I can fight this publicly, but it would affect me from an election standpoint, possibly. You know, and I can fight this publicly. Then it would become just a straight up political theater type of situation. You know, because at the end of the day, you know, the county mayor that's over the fire department, at the end of the day, he has the last say in what happens with this. But I think they realized, and maybe they knew, you know, and they were deliberate as to how they handle things, but things are being handled. I received a letter of investigation actually last week from the same guy, 2 weeks ago, from the same guy. I guess on his way out, I guess he's gonna get one last shot in there, you know, and it's unbelievable, and I don't mind talking about it, you know. He sent me a letter of investigation, and you know, of course, another one of those things didn't stick. You know, maybe he's watching this. You know, maybe he'll rephrase it or something and send it back. But you know, and I sent an email and just to remind them, I hope that this is not personal in nature. Never heard anything back. Right? And you know, and again, you know, these things, you know, it's chess, not checkers. And you have to be smart. You have to be deliberate in how you respond to it and how you approach it, you know, and dealing with these, because it's delicate, because we're talking about your livelihood. And most people, and I've watched it, and we've all seen it, you know, where most people that have dealt with this situation, most of them are gone. Most of them leave their jobs. And we've watched them pile on. What do we call it? There was a term y'all used up here for that. What was it? Mobbing. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, we call it piling on. They were piling on like piranha effect, you know, like some meat in the water. Yeah, and I hate to see that because we're talking about people's jobs. Yeah. But you know, and it's so interesting, you know, and having been a survivor of it, because I don't want to call myself a victim, but a survivor of it, it's so interesting, you know, I wouldn't even wish that kind of treatment on him. And I think most of us in here have that now. Keep in mind, now don't get it twisted. Now, I did revert back to my, well, the thoughts anyway, to, you know, how I responded with the childhood bullying, and I did have those thoughts. and we should talk about that. We should talk about that, seriously, you know. At the age of 14, I brought a gun to school to get the bullies off me. But what about all of the people that have gone into the workplace and have committed acts of workplace violence? Because I did think about it. I'm probably the most open elected official you'll meet too. but I did think about it. I didn't act on it, I wasn't going to do it. You know, but what about the people that do? You know, and back, watch this. When I was 14 years old and I brought that gun to school, you know, immediately they wanted to tag me or label me as a gang member. I wasn't a gang member. I was nothing near a gang member. Now, guess what happens when these individuals commit these acts of workplace violence? He was crazy. He was unstable. He was, you know, what happened? We never hear about what happened before. We never ever, and maybe that's a research project that we should look into as a coalition. You know, what happened before he went into the workplace and slapped the taste out of the mouth of his boss? Or went into the workplace and shot the place up? What happened? What was happening before that? But I hadn't seen much research on that, you know, what was happening before that. And I think we need to know. I think it's important to know. Because I think there's a tie. I believe there's a tie. You know, sometimes, you know, when you back people into a corner, and you never know what people are going through at that point in time in that day, and you never know what's happening in their household. You never know if they have a child that's dealing with an illness, or a wife that's, you know, giving additional problems, or a husband that's giving additional problems to them also. Make sure I balance that out. I don't want to be ran out here with rakes and pitchforks. But you never know where people are at any given time, you know, in their lives. And you never know where that person that's doing the bullying is at any given time in his life or her life. You know, and so, but you know, but I think all of this stuff is worthy for us to continue this mission. This mission is a valid mission. And I told Catherine on the way up here, I told her it's her ministry, and that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we are improving people's quality of life. And that's what matters. Let me make sure I'm hitting on everything so I don't leave anything else. I do want to tell you this though, you know, when we were passing the legislation, when we were, this legislation, I'm gonna tell you how hard we fought for this, because for a minute we thought we had lost it. For a minute it was on life support. For a minute it was dead. For a minute, then it came back. Somebody did CPR on it and brought it back. But this law was the very last bill that passed in the House and the Senate on the last day of session. As a matter of fact, we went over before closing out the entire session because we were waiting on the conference committee. What the conference committee is when members of the House and members of the Senate get together and discuss the differences between their version of it and our version of it. So what you had was you had members of both chambers sitting there waiting, sweating, talking, you know, wondering when this is going to be over with. And you know me, I'm sweating bullets because I don't want them to, you know, I don't want us to clash and not come to an agreement, but we got it worked out, and it was the very last bill that passed last session. And it's a good bill. Now let me tell you where we are. Let me tell you the mechanics of the bill, how it works. In our infinite wisdom, you know, they say we know everything. That's what my colleagues tell me. We know everything. I think we don't know anything. But they you know, when these laws are being drafted, they start out one way, and they go through this, what we call the sausage machine, right? And they come out something totally different than what you started with, you know. But I do like what we did come out with. I think it's crafty. I think it's unique. And I was told it's the first in the country. to be passed anyway. And so what are the mechanics? The way it works is this. The question was, how do you pass a law like this in a state where they can fire you if you sneeze wrong? How do you even get them to even pay attention or even, be open to this at all? So you have to offer something. I'll never forget when I first started talking about this law, and I started talking to the, you got lobbyists that represent the cities, and you got the lobbyists that represent the counties, and you got the lobbyists that represent the businesses, and you got lobbyists for everything. So I started talking about this, and I mentioned it to the lobbyists that represent the city, and they were like, oh, hell no. The lobbyists that represent the county, oh, hell no. Lobbyists that represented the carpet makers, oh, hell no. Nobody wanted this bill. Nobody wanted this law because they felt like it was something that was going to create some regulation and a cause of action that didn't already exist. So the ability to sue someone that wasn't already there. And then once we actually had to sit these people down and really walk through this and explain to them, what we're trying to do. And then they started saying, oh, wow. So how we got them to get to the all wow point was because we offered something. And what we offered was, we offered these governments immunity. Look at these faces now. You're looking like they were looking at first. Immunity? Yes, but this is our goal. This is what our goal was. Our goal was, number one, to prevent workplace bullying. Number one, we wanted to prevent it, okay? Number two, we wanted to isolate the perpetrator, okay? Isolate the perpetrator. And how do we do that? This is how we do it. We say, right now, before the bill was passed in the state of Tennessee, if someone was bullying you, and remember, we carved out the sliver of people that didn't fit into the protected classes that was already covered by the federal government. All right? Everybody with me on that? So this guy that was trying to bully me, he wasn't bullying me because I was black. He was bullying me because he was jealous of my trajectory. Right. So that's not covered under protected class. We tried our best to find it too, but we just couldn't find it. It's not covered. And so what about those people? What about, and every time I talk to an attorney, they say, well, there's nothing here for that, for what you're going through. There's no law. There's nothing for us to base this on. There's no foundation for us to even sue in some cases. But what we found is, you still could sue the company. You could sue the employer that allowed this to happen. Okay, so that cause of action already existed. So our infinite wisdom, we were like, well, let's go get this guy. Let's go get the guy that's actually doing it. That's actually the perpetrator. Let's go get him. Because in some cases, what would happen? In some cases, you have, let's say, for lack of a better example, we'll say the police department. You have the police chief that doesn't like you, but you're out in the field, a patrol officer. Well, the police chief is not going to come down there and harass you. He's going to send his guys out there to harass you. So you're a lieutenant. Hey, go out there and get him, because I don't like him he's outspoken, and he tells the truth, and we don't like to tell the truth. So it's his supervisor that starts doing the dirty work, and he may be doing dirty work for the police chief, for the upper supervisor. Well, under this law now, because if this employer puts a policy in place that educates all of his employees as to what workplace bullying is, okay? Now that idea of, let's say for instance, if the lieutenant was coming down on him and he said, hey, chief, this guy is bullying me. Well, if the lieutenant says, hey, I didn't know what that was. I don't know what bullying is. What do you mean I'm bullying you? What does that mean? Well, now that negligent argument is gone. It's removed. And the fact that this employer has educated this guy, now that employer has done his part in regards to workplace bullying. Therefore, he gets immunity. Okay? But now, guess who's out there by himself? The lieutenant that was harassing my friend. You see what I'm saying? So we've isolated them through this legislation. Now the only person that's eligible to be sued is that person that was doing it, because the employer did their part. We said, here's our policy, read it, sign it, go through this class, you know what we're doing. This is workplace bullying. Okay? My time up?
No, I was taking notes.
Oh, okay. So this is workplace bullying. You have no excuse to be out here doing it now. You've been educated. Okay? Watch the prevention piece. So if I've been educated now, when that chief comes to you and comes to the lieutenant and says, hey, go get him, man. We're tired of him, man. He's always doing good. That lieutenant's gonna be like, ho, 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 you got immunity. I won't have it. I'll be out here on my own. You know, and I have to deal with everything that comes with, you know, going out here and abusing this guy. So that's the mechanics of how that law works, of how the Healthy Workplace Act works in the state of Tennessee. Now, inside of those mechanics, inside of the law has passed, so it is the law. Inside of that law, it charged the TASER, which is the Tennessee Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations. Let me hear you say that twice. Right. I just learned to say. I'm telling you, I was struggling with everything. So TASER's job is to come up with a model policy. Now, this model policy does not mean that you know you have to adopt it. It's just a policy, a guide that you can go by and you can look at this policy and draft your own policy for every single public employer in the state. So that's your schools, higher education, police departments, fire departments, the governor's staff, everything government from at the state level all the way down to the local level. And TASER did their job. They created a policy. And we made that in the law it says that you can adopt a policy that TASER created, or you can adopt your own policy and you know, and educate your people. But you cannot get immunity until you do that. Right, got it? Follow me? So unless you have a policy in place, you as an employer, as a public employer, will not receive that immunity until you have it in place and your employees have it.
So the burden of proof then is on the organization to provide evidence that they have the policy?
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. And that frees them from suit. But it isolates perpetrators.
And that motivates them to get the policy
That's
done.
the carrot. That's
And get the training
offering
and
something.
documents.
We could not have gotten that law passed had we not had the immunity piece in there. Because the cities and the counties were adamantly opposed to it. But after we put that immunity piece in it, they were our allies.
Oh, yeah.
They were pushing it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in your example, is the lieutenant protected if his superior orders him to bully?
Absolutely not.
He's not protected?
Absolutely not.
What prevents the employer from just firing him then?
Well, then the employer became the bullier.
Oh, okay.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, there has to be some kind of
Right.
protection.
But you have to put them on an island. Put them on an island by themselves. And then when they start, because keep in mind, think about it. In my situation, the battalion chief that was bearing down on me was protected, all the way up the chain. All the way up the chain. For a minute, anyway.
I could see that might be a negative though, or maybe when we ask this in a question, let's say there is a so-called bully who turns out not to be bullying, but to maybe just have an issue with communication and how they present. What happens in a case like that? Because the so-called bully is hung out to dry, and then the organization just terminates them or whatever.
Well, if the bully,
You want me to help?
right,
Yeah, because so if the organization has a policy in place regarding workplace bullying and someone complains about it, the bully, or the organization has a policy in place that they
Right.
have to follow now. So they would have to conduct an investigation.
Okay,
If
that's
they
what I
determined that that person
Oh.
was not bullying,
So it's
that's a
the
whole
process.
another set of.
Oh, absolutely.
can of worms.
And I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood the question because it's still absolutely the process. You still have your process, same processes that whatever your due process,
Same due process.
right, whatever that is. Yeah, it still be the same process. And then let me touch on this. We you know, in our strategy in setting up this legislation, you know, sometimes strategically, you know, we'll put more in there that we don't really want in the
Yeah.
law, just so that they can say that
Get
they
it through.
pushed it back. Well, yeah, we got this out of it, so we reduced it, you know, yeah, right. So we had the private sector in there, but it was never, honestly, never the intent to do the private sector at this time. You know, it was always, you know, for it to be public sector employees. Yes, ma'am.
The fact that it's probably would be encouraged by private.
How are you communicating this? Because I work for county government,
Mhm.
and I had been in Tennessee, I'm now in Virginia, but the biggest challenge I have is, in Tennessee is very much like where I am, and there's a lot of rural areas, and those are kingdoms.
Right.
You know,
That- you're
certain
absolutely
people
right.
in that community, and they rule it, it doesn't matter, that's the way it's gonna be, and you don't have that communication that you would in Memphis. You don't have that communication, because half of them don't even have access to cellular phones, they don't have Wi-Fi.
You-
How do you get that communication that, okay, now you're being protected?
Well, you know, they have, and I hope I'm answering your question properly. They have representatives at the state legislature. So there are organizations that represent every county government in the state of Tennessee that's at the state legislature.
And are the state representatives committed to going out to these smaller and I'm talking for Tennessee because I want these guys to have it. I have lived in Virginia 5 different times, in several different counties, been very active in my community, and I've lived in multiple different areas. I've never met face to face in my community my representative.
Wow.
They've never visited.
Now that's a different animal. Now, however, I'm happy to go and talk to anyone that will listen to me about this.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and they do have televisions. I mean,
Well-
back to old-fashioned TV.
Don't take it for
But
granted.
is that
Yeah.
is it on the TV?
Right, but
Well, that's the point. Get it on TV.
and here's the thing, and to answer that question is, you should be holding your representative accountable.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
definitely.
and so,
Me,
right,
I'm not spoken enough, yes, I'm gonna,
Right.
you know, and I have
Right.
made comments to but a lot of the rule, and that's just, again, I know the essence, and I love the bill.
Right.
I support it, getting the word out.
yeah, and so here's
Because
the,
that's a security
Right.
for them to know, because
Right.
they're not gonna report
Right.
until they
She
give
has a
it
comment.
okay.
I can help with it. I'm from Tennessee,
Okay.
and actually I was talking to a few of my friends down there, and my one friend lives in Woodbury, which I don't know if you even know where that is. It's very tiny, it's right outside of Middle Tennessee, right
Okay.
outside of Murfreesboro,
Okay.
and she knew about it. And
Wow.
she lives in
Man.
podunk nowhere, like
But-
Woodbury
yeah.
is thinking one of the most
I'm coming
backward.
from some very.
Area.
Right.
and-
You know, and here's the thing, and not to belabor, the
great.
thing is, there's a representative that represent the counties,
Sure.
a lobbyist that represent the counties and the county's needs. And I guarantee you that they are sending information to every single county about every single thing that affects the counties. And so now whether the county leaders
Man.
do something about that, then that's up to the county leaders. But I guarantee you, they got the information.
They got it.
They got the information.
Very cool.
Yes, ma'am.
Harassment claims, an employer is supposed to take care of that. If it doesn't happen, an employee can go to the EOC. For yours, do they have to go to the EOC or they go somewhere else?
It doesn't change any of that. It doesn't change any of that. They can take any route that they want to take in reporting or getting a remedy if they want to. It doesn't change any of that. But what it does is it puts that perpetrator out on the island if that perpetrator wants to take a chance and do that.
But if he does it non-status based, it would have to be a civil suit.
If he does what now?
If the lieutenant does engage in the workplace bullying and it's not status based, so it's not based upon race, color, national origin, gender.
It is, I think it does fall in civil, it's not criminal.
They would have to file a civil
Right,
complaint
right.
through the federal, or through the state court system.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, I think the point I was gonna make earlier about that is, you know, one of the things to keep in mind is a plaintiff's success rate in civil cases is extremely low. So it's still an extreme burden for, you know, plaintiffs, and the defendant is still at the advantage under any type of civil case. So, you know, there might be a few that get caught into your concern, but I wouldn't be overly concerned by those.
Can I
Right.
ask a question? So when you're saying the bully kind of gets hung out to dry on their own if, you know, if they're left bullying, what does that mean exactly? So the target can go after the bully
They
in a
can.
civil case?
They can go after, they can sue them, and the employer does not have to defend them.
Okay, so they'll be left to pay their own.
That's right,
fees and all
that's
that.
right.
Okay.
But then so would the victim.
That's right.
Has to
Yeah.
pay their own suit, but there's a remedy.
Right.
That's cool.
Can the employer defend them?
You know, that question came up in TASER meeting. That if they choose to, we didn't put anything in there that restricted them from not defending. So, yeah,
Interesting.
right,
Oh, if they feel that
right.
he wasn't bullied.
But I would think that you know, the fact that we have immunity means something to me as an employer. You know, and I would be using it, you know, my immunity stick, you know, and not for this.
I wonder if, as an attorney though, I wonder if the attorney could represent them. Because the attorney would have to show that the employer met their immunity, right? And since they're being paid by the employer, they have a legal ethics responsibility to that employer. And that would be detrimental to that person who's now out on the island because of the employer's immunity. So I would think the ethical standards might make it impossible for an attorney to represent a worker under that situation.
And have the immunity at the same time.
Yes, yeah. I would, just sort of thinking through it a little bit.
Right. Well, I know if I educated an individual, if I tell you, do not walk in that street because that traffic, or don't walk across that highway at night because the people can't see you.
Yeah.
Now, I've told you, and I've given you your piece of paper, and you signed on this piece of paper, you said, I know that if I walk across that street or that highway at night, I might get ran over. And you still choose to do it? So, should I defend you after you?
I think no. I don't want the employers
Right,
defending them, to be honest.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, you know, and so it's almost like if you're a police officer and you go through the, you know, what we're dealing with now, you go through this gun training and you know, gun safety, and you know everything and how to handle these things and handle these situations, and yet you still choose to go out and you know, kill someone, you know, without going through the protocol and the SOP that's set before you.
Yeah.
You know, you've isolated yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put yourself on an island, and so when the lawsuits come flying, you think the cities are going to want to, you know, yeah. So kind of the same situation, kind of same setup, you know. But again, the key, what we want is this: we don't want anyone to get sued. I hope no one ever becomes a victim of this legislation. And then I'm talking about the perpetrators. What we want them to do is think about it. Well, hey, whoa, I might be sued, so I'm not going to do this. That's the whole goal. Psychological deterrent. That's what we're trying to set up. Psychological deterrent, you know, to make them
But
think about it.
again, that begs, the point is they have to have an awareness that they are the
That they are the.
That's right.
My
That's why it's
That's what the
designed
policy is
for
for.
bullying and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, and you did not include intention, thank you. So, it
Right.
doesn't matter if it's intentional or not, you know, it's a good thing.
Right, and it's all about educating, because again, you know, how many times do we see on these slides today where these individuals that were the perpetrators didn't even realize that they were doing it? You know, and I don't think they do. I think, you know, and then think about this, in some cases, you know, these are just corporate habits that are being passed on, you know, from their supervisors. And passed on and passed on and passed on.
Well,
Right.
and hopefully the coalition can help spread some of the word.
Well, we're forever tied to Rep. Parkinson because the TASER,
Right.
they reached out to us and asked us if we had a policy to help craft that template policy, so we got to participate
Right.
in that. So
Awesome, yeah.
we are
They did a
part
great
of
job.
that process,
Yeah,
so that was
we're
good.
all joined at the hip here.
Yeah.
All right, that's right. But what we need to do though, we really need to push our federal lawmakers to get this done.
Right.
And so that we can push down from the top down and make it happen in every state. Every single state needs a healthy workplace.
becomes a pilot study.
Yeah.
Yes, and let's build on it. Let's build on it.
Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions for me? Anybody got any good jokes? All right, well, thank you guys very much.